In 1944, a group of psychologists conducted a study that would change our understanding of the human ego forever. They presented participants with two paths, one that led to a guaranteed reward through humble effort, and another that led to a grandiose, though likely fictional, status through deceit. To the researchers' surprise, nearly 80% of the participants chose the path of the phantom crown, preferring the illusion of being elite over the reality of being capable. As we stand on the precipice of 2026, this psychological glitch has become our global operating system. Most people are currently architecting their own demise, not because they lack opportunity, but because they have fallen in love with a version of themselves that does not exist. We are entering a year where the gap between the perceived self and the functional self will widen into a chasm so deep that most will never climb out. If you feel a strange, cold intuition that the world is becoming more volatile, you aren't being paranoid. You are simply noticing the gears of the great filtering turning. The reason you are here is that you suspect there is a hidden architecture to failure, a blueprint that the masses are unconsciously following. In 2026, the economy of attention will finalize its transition into the economy of extraction. Most people will fail because they are no longer the consumers of the digital landscape. They have become the fuel. They are operating on a psychological delayed return system while their biology is being hijacked by instant gratification loops. This creates a state of chronic cognitive dissonance where the mind dreams of 2027 while the body is paralyzed in the distractions of today. This paralysis is not an accident. It is the intended result of a world designed to keep you in a state of perpetual preparation. You tell yourself you need one more book, one more course, or one more perfect moment before you begin your ascent. But the truth is far more uncomfortable. This desire for readiness is actually a sophisticated defense mechanism of the ego, a way to avoid the pain of being a beginner. In the shadow of what I will reveal at the end of this journey, the ultimate mechanism of the 2026 collapse, lies the first harsh truth. Your brain would rather you fail comfortably than succeed uncomfortably. In the lexicon of dark psychology, there is a concept known as learned helplessness, but for 2026, we must upgrade this to manufactured helplessness. Unlike the dogs in Seligman's famous experiments who stopped trying to escape the shock because they believed they couldn't, the modern individual is being shocked by a surplus of choice. When you are presented with infinite paths, the ego chooses none to protect the possibility of all. This is the God paradox. By never committing to a single direction, you maintain the internal fantasy that you could be anything. The moment you act, you become something specific, and in doing so, you kill the God version of yourself that could have been everything else. Most people in 2026 will fail because they would rather die as a potential genius than live as a proven amateur. They are victims of a subtle form of narcissism that treats time as an infinite resource rather than a shrinking window. They forget that 2026 is not a starting line, it is a filter. As the global landscape shifts, we see the rise of the hyper-individual. This sounds like a term for strength, but in reality, it is a psychological trap. By severing communal ties and focusing entirely on self-optimization, the individual loses the external mirrors required for sanity. You cannot see the rot in your own foundations. Dark psychology tells us that the most effective way to control a population is to make them believe they are entirely autonomous while feeding them the scripts they use to define that autonomy. In 2026, the scripts of hustle culture and self-care will converge into a single exhausting loop of self-exploitation. You will be told to work until you break and then sold the cure for the breakage, only to be sent back into the fray. Those who fail will be the ones who believe these scripts are their own ideas. They are the pupils of history who have forgotten how to read. The infrastructure of 2026 is being built on the bones of the middle class's focus. We have entered the era of cognitive colonization. Every notification, every algorithmic recommendation is a microtransaction for your agency. Most people will fail because they are no longer the masters of their own dopamine. They have outsourced their motivation to a machine that profits from their dissatisfaction. Think of the sunk cost fallacy. You have spent years building a digital identity, a social circle, and a set of habits that are now obsolete. The psychological pain of discarding these things is so great that most will choose to go down with the ship. They will cling to the tools of 2020 while trying to solve the problems of 2026. This is the Amish effect of the modern era. Not a rejection of technology, but a psychological inability to adapt to the velocity of change. We must discuss the shadow work of the coming year. In philosophical terms, the shadow is everything about ourselves we refuse to acknowledge. In 2026, the shadow of the collective will manifest as a global identity crisis. As artificial intelligence begins to mirror human creativity and intellect, the why of human existence becomes a haunting question. Those who fail will be those who defined their value through utility, what they can do or produce. When a machine can do it better, the utility-based ego collapses into nihilism. This is the great emptiness. You see it already in the glazed eyes of the commuters and the frantic posting of the influencers. They are trying to prove they still exist in a world that is rapidly learning to simulate them. The secret to surviving this transition, which I will detail as we reach the final revelation, lies in moving from the what to the who. Dark psychology often uses the fear of missing out, but the 2026 failure will be driven by the fear of being seen. To succeed in the coming year, you must be willing to be disliked, misunderstood, and lonely. Most people cannot handle the social death required for actual growth. They are biologically wired to seek the warmth of the herd, even if the herd is walking off a cliff. The herd in 2026 is moving towards a sanitized algorithmic mediocrity. To step away from that is to trigger the brain's ancient exile alarm. This is where Machiavellian intelligence becomes a survival tool, not to manipulate others, but to manipulate your own biology. You must learn to treat your own social anxiety as a false signal, a ghost from a tribal past that no longer exists. The harsh truth is that your friends and family are often the primary architects of your failure, not out of malice, but because your growth threatens the stability of their own stagnation. Transitioning into the heart of the matter, we find the concept of amor fati, the love of one's fate. But in 2026, people do not love their fate. They are terrified of it. They spend their days in simulated lives, trading real risks for virtual rewards. This leads to what psychologists call atrophy of the will. The will is like a muscle. If you do not use it to make difficult, consequential decisions, it withers. By 2026, the average person's will be so weak that they will be unable to resist even the most basic environmental pressures. They will become human weather vanes, turning whichever way the cultural wind blows. Failure in this context isn't a single event, it's a gradual loss of the ability to say no. It's the slow surrender of the self to the they. Consider the crab mentality on a global scale. As resources tighten and the digital landscape becomes more competitive, the collective will move to pull down anyone who attempts to climb higher. This is the leveling mechanism of a decaying society. In 2026, if you are not being criticized, you are likely not doing anything meaningful. The psychological price of success is a form of emotional tax that most people are unwilling to pay. They want the results of the top 1% while maintaining the popularity of the bottom 99%. This is a mathematical and psychological impossibility.
To enter the elite circles of the coming year, you must embrace the dark room, the period of time when you are working in total isolation with no external validation and no guarantee of success. Most will quit during the dark room because they have become validation junkies, unable to function without the hit of a digital like. There's a subtle technique in dark persuasion called the illusion of progress. It's why apps have progress bars and leveling systems. In 2026, your life will be filled with these illusions. You will feel busy, you will feel productive, but you are running on a treadmill. You are moving, but you are not traveling. This is the busy work trap. Most people will fail because they confused activity with achievement. They will spend 2026 optimizing their routine, curating their workspace, and networking with other treadmill runners. They are building a beautiful cage. The truth is that real progress